Hi, I'm Jake and I'm a PhD student funded by PGRO and I'm based at Cambridge University, and my PhD project is looking at strategies to try and enhance pollination and yield in field beans, Vicia faba. So some of the main aims of my project are firstly to figure out if there are any differences in broad bean varieties which we grow, so in terms of the floral characteristics, so things like nectar, sugar content, also the physical attributes, so things like colour and shape and size, and also how that relates to bee attraction. So do any of these flower characteristics help to attract more bees in? So do any broad bean varieties have more characteristics which can increase pollinator visitation to the field, and does that relate to an increase in yield? So one of the things I'm doing for my project is having the field trial that I've got here, and there are two experiments that I'm doing in this field trial. The first one is looking at if bees have any preference between different varieties in a field setting, so things like we might see in a realistic agricultural field. So I'm growing 5 different varieties in this field. Some of them have quite high sugar content in the nectar and quite what we might consider to be attractive flowers. Others have quite a low sugar content in the nectar and more smaller, sparse flowers. And I want to see, do bees visit some plots more than others? And the second part of this experiment is seeing if this relates to an increase in yield. So do the varieties which receive more visits produce more beans at the end of the season? So the experiment I'm doing has this cage behind us. So I've got some plots inside the cage which are excluded for bees, so no bees can get inside the cage, and the ones outside the cage have open pollination, so any pollinators can easily access the flowers. So at the end of the season I'm going to harvest all of these plots and see, is there any difference in the overall plot yield between inside and outside the cage, and also do we get any differences in the amounts of beans produced, the size of beans and the quality. And hopefully this will inform us of if these flower characteristics relate to any increases in yield, which at the end of the day is what we want to advise for breeders. And if we find there's any differences, then hopefully we could use these characteristics as breeding traits in the future. So with bumblebees declining and the population increasing, we need to make better use of our crops. And if we can breed varieties which are both more attractive and beneficial for bees, then hopefully we can make better use of the crops and also help to support wild pollinator populations. And this will hopefully provide us with more sustainable food sources in the future, while also reducing the environmental impact of crops like this on wild pollinator populations.